Let's take a moment for a time of prayer and meditation. So I invite you to just relax, let go of busy thoughts, stressful emotions, discomforts in your body. For this is a special time. We are called to that quiet, sacred space where we consciously know that we are in the very presence of God. It just so happens that today's daily word reading exactly matches our message for today. So I thought we'd spend some time considering the thoughts in today's daily word. And the prayer thought says, prayer flows throughout my life. Prayer flows throughout my life. Just as my body needs water to stay healthy, my soul draws strength from living water, the ever-flowing presence of Spirit within. As I drink from this well, I am refreshed and ready to meet each moment prayerfully. Fortified by divine love, prayer flows naturally. When challenges or opportunities arise, I turn inward. When I start or complete a task, I pause to express gratitude. When I meet someone in need or am helped by another, I hold them in thoughts of light and love. Whether I pray aloud or pray silently, the prayerful energy arising from within me is a blessing. I open myself to Spirit's presence, and my prayer practice deepens. Prayer flows as naturally as breath itself, an inspired rhythm of life, sustained by living water that never runs dry. Prayer flows throughout my life and opens the gate for the flow of living water. That spiritual awareness that lifts our consciousness. I am in the flow of living water, and it quenches my thirst to know Spirit, to know love, to know peace and understanding, to know power and willingness, and all of my spiritual gifts. I am in the flow of spiritual understanding and living water. I open my mind and heart to the inspiration of Spirit. I know what to do, and I'm able to do it. I am love in action, and I am loved, and I am loving. I am a peacemaker. I am a beloved child of God, in whom He is well pleased. I am all of these things and more. Loving Spirit, we are so grateful for this time of conscious oneness with you. To know that your presence, power, and activity of all goodness and love is right where we are. Every moment. We live and move and have our being in your presence, power, and activity. And you live and move and have your being, Holy Spirit, as you express fully through us. For all of this and so much more, we are truly, truly grateful. And so it is. Amen. I need to take a moment to wet my whistle here. Okay. Before I start, I always like to have a funny or so. And so I have some riddles for you. Why did the turtle cross the road? Because it was the chicken's day off. Why did the elephant cross the road? Because he was stapled to the chicken.
Oh.
That's my niece's favorite joke. So today we're going to talk about the law of humility. And as I chose this is different than what I thought it was going to be, and it made me stretch. So the idea of humility is to be teachable. To be teachable, not only by the Spirit, but as the Spirit moves through those around us and the situations and events around us. Because everything's a teaching moment. We're always learning, we're always changing, we're always growing. That's just the whole purpose of being here. And so here's what the law of humility says. You can't change what you refuse to accept. Growth starts with self-awareness. If you continually blame others, you lose the power to improve your life. The transformation happens when you acknowledge reality and take responsibility. It's all about learning and growing. In life today, there seems to be much to complain about. The cost of gas and the cost of groceries, the cost of utilities, the cost of home and car repairs. But complaining doesn't make it any easier to deal with these things. And you can always find somebody that's willing to complain. But complaining doesn't make us any stronger or able to deal with what's before us. We need to understand the difference between physical economics and spiritual economics. And if you want to read a really great book on that, Spiritual Economics by Reverend Eric Butterworth is one of my favorite Unity books. If you haven't read it, I would suggest that you do. So in physical economics versus spiritual economics, physical economics is supply versus demand. If the supply is high and the demand is low, then there's an abundance. But if it's in the reverse, if demand exceeds supply, there's a shortage. And we all remember what that panic buying was about when COVID-19 came into our lives. And who would have thought that the most important thing in life would be toilet paper? People were buying it by the carload. That drove me crazy to watch that on TV. People just grabbing up these huge bundles of toilet paper. Like, there was never ever going to be any more. Well, I got creative. If I couldn't find toilet paper, I bought Kleenex. There was plenty of Kleenex on the shelf. So I just went and bought Kleenex. I thought, well, hey, you do what you got to do. In spiritual economics, supply always exceeds demand because you cannot deplete the source. God never runs out of supply. The universe never runs out of supply. It just doesn't happen. You can't deplete source. There's always enough. We then realize abundant living is about raising the vibration of consciousness. It's not about looking out here. It's about knowing what's really true. And that's what gets us through these times. Not looking out here and saying, well, there's no more toilet paper. It's not the end of the world. Our life does not improve by blaming others or blaming the government or blaming our employer or blaming our family. When we blame, we give our power away. It's no wonder we feel helpless, hopeless, and depressed because we feel powerless. During the Great Depression, my dad's family moved to Missouri to his grandfather's farm. And the family worked the farm. They had chickens and they grew their own vegetables. And my grandma did a lot of canning so that they would have things for the winter. And they had a plan and they worked their plan. No matter what else was going on out there, they had a plan and they worked it. And they made it through the Depression. Plus, my grandpa was working during the Depression, and that was kind of unusual. In the Bible, there's a story about the prophet Elijah and a widow, and I'd like to share this with you from the Old Testament, 2 Kings, let me find the right place, chapter 4, verses 1 through 7. A certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets cried out to Elisha, saying, "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that your servant feared the Lord, and the creditor is coming to take my 2 sons to be his slaves." So Elisha said to her, "What shall I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in the house?" And she said, "Your maidservant has nothing in the house but a jar of oil." Then he said, "Go borrow vessels from everywhere, from all of your neighbors, empty vessels. Do not gather just a few. And when you have come in, you shall shut the door behind you and your sons. Then pour it into all those vessels and set aside the full ones." So she went from him and shut the door behind her and her sons, who brought the vessels to her, and she poured it out. Now it came to pass when the vessels were full that she said to her son, "Bring me another vessel." And he said to her, "There is not another vessel." So the oil ceased. Then she came and told the man of God, and he said, "Go sell the oil and pay your debt, and you and your sons live on the rest." She was desperate. The woman has a serious challenge in front of her. However, she chose to speak to Elisha. Instead of complaining, she went to somebody that she felt could help her. And she explained the reality she was facing. and he suggested to begin with what she had at hand. That's a good point for us. We sometimes say, well, where do I begin? What do I have to start with? And that's where you start, with what you have, what you know, what you can do. And that's a step to where you want to go. And so he suggested that she start with what she had on hand, which she said was oil. And she followed his instructions. Once they went into the house, they closed the doors. And understand what that means. The outside distractions were closed off. They were there concentrating all of their energy on what they hoped to accomplish, which was filling the jars with oil. They weren't disturbed or distracted by what was going on outside of where they were. The flow of supply began until there were no more jars, and she sold the oil, paid the creditors, saved her sons, and had money left over to live on. When divine instruction comes, it's something that we need to follow. We have a choice. We don't have to. But why ask for it if you're not going to follow it? That instruction comes to us for a reason. At this stage of my life, I think, who's going to take care of that? Or who's going to take care of this? Who's going to do the gardening and the yard work? And then I hear the reply, well, you are, Carol. You are. It's yours to do now. And so what are you going to do about it? And I always use that phrase, what are you going to do about it? Because people come to me as a counselor and they're whining and complaining and crying and all of this. And finally, when they take a breath, I say to them, so what are you going to do about that? I have to put the seed out there. What are you going to do about that? It's a stark look at reality, but once we acknowledge what the reality is, we can take responsibility and do something about it to change, heal, or prosper the situation. The outcome depends on us, not someone or something else, unless those outer influences are there to help and support us in our journey. A second Bible story found in the book of John that I would like to share, and I have to find that one. Let's see, where are we? Okay. And this comes from John chapter 4, verses 3 through 26. Jesus left Judea and departed again to Galilee, but he needed to go through Samaria. So he came to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now Joseph's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being wearied from his journey, sat thus by the well. It was about the 6th hour. A woman of Samaria came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." For his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. Then the woman of Samaria said to him, "How is it that you, being a Jew, ask a drink from me, a Samaritan woman? For Jews have no dealing with Samaritans." Jesus answered and said to her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is who says to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." The woman said to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where then do you get that living water?" Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us this well, and drink from it himself, as well as his sons and his livestock?" Jesus answered and said to her, "Whoever drinks of this water will thirst again. But whoever drinks of the water that I shall give him will never thirst. But the water that I shall give him will become in him like a fountain of water springing up into everlasting life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water, that I may not thirst, nor come here to draw." Jesus said to her, "Go call your husband and come here." The woman answered and said, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You have well said, 'I have no husband,' for you have had 5 husbands, and the one whom you now have is not your husband. In that you spoke truly." The woman said to him, "Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and you Jews say that in Jerusalem is the place where one ought to worship." Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. You will worship what you do not know. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. But the hour is coming, and now is, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for the Father is seeking such to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth." The woman said to him, "I know that the Messiah is coming. When he comes, he will tell us of all things." And he said to her, "I who speak to you am he." This is Jesus' first mention of who he was and what his mission was. Okay, where am I now? The Samaritan woman represents the soul that has not yet been spiritually awakened. Jesus recognizes her soul to be worthy to receive the living water. Charles Fillmore writes, quote, "The soul draws its life from both the earthly side of existence, which is Jacob's well, and the spiritual, represented by the Jews, but is destined to draw from a higher fount, which is omnipotent spirit," end quote. Jesus offers her living water, which is spiritual inspiration, and she asks for this living water, but she doesn't know where or how to get it. Jesus does call her attention to the facts of her lifestyle and that it was immoral and which would deter her spiritual progress. The woman shows an interest in knowing more. She didn't understand why Jerusalem was the only proper place to worship, according to the Jews. The Jews represent a higher concept of God. But Jesus said it would be even more than that. It would be to worship God in spirit and in truth. The woman believed in the coming of the Messiah who will declare unto us all things. Jesus revealed to her his true identity. I am he who speaks to you. In order for the Samaritan woman to receive the living water, she must be accountable and take responsibility for her immoral lifestyle. She's inspired to know more about the living water, but will she actually do the work to receive it? She could have a different life if she would change her habits. But will she? Will she blame others so that she could stay the same? Is changing too difficult for her? We all have felt that nudging and inspiration of the Christ presence, but only hearing the voice is not enough. We have to take action. We have to be responsible for affecting change in our life. We have everything it takes at hand, and if more is needed, it will be given. As we grow in spiritual awareness, we begin to spiritually mature. And in 1 Corinthians 13, I want to share with you just part of this, because this is starts out about love, but what I want to share with you is, okay, therefore, if I do not know the meaning of the language, is that the right one? Am I writing the right one? No, I'm not the right one. Okay. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know just as I also am known. In other words, we start out as spiritually immature, but when we grow into an adult, we mature, and we mature spiritually. And at that point, we become responsible. We become self-reliant. We become motivated. And we're willing to do what we need to do. As we spiritually mature, we learn we must do our part as a co-creator with God. And also we have read in the Bible, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. We have to get beyond the belief that it's too much, we're not capable, the world reports against that. None of that is true. The truth lies in us becoming one in consciousness with God. And then we let our steps be directed. We have all we need, and I can't stress this enough. We have all that we need. You're never going to have any more faith or love or understanding or power than you have now. We just don't realize it. We have to raise our vibration of that. We have it all. We just don't realize it. We think most of that comes from outside of ourselves, and it does not. It does not. It comes from within. It's a gift from God with love. And so I'll get down off my soapbox and I'll just say, I want to read this one more time, this law. And it says, we can't change what we refuse to accept. Growth starts with self-awareness. If you continually blame others, you lose the power to improve your life. The transformation happens when you acknowledge reality and take responsibility. It's up to us to change our lives, to live our lives the way that God inspires us to. And I bless you on your journey. Thank you.